Am I the asshole for hooking up with my best friend's ex and now we're in love? Disclaimers is not my story time on Instagram. My bestie and I have known each other for over 10 years. Our lives have always been intertwined because we have the exact same careers and actually work at the same job. So her and I spend a lot of time together. My bestie and her ex broke up in 2020. The reason they broke up was because my best friend met another guy. When she broke up with her boyfriend, she didn't tell him that she met someone else. She told him that she fell out of love with him. He was so heartbroken that he actually decided to move away. After he started following me on Instagram and he would reply to my stories every now and then. But I would never engage because hello, she's my best friend's ex. But sometimes he would comment really nice things. So I started replying back. Now here's a little info on me. I'm a very shy girl. I've never had a serious relationship and I'm 23 years old. The only time I've ever dated is if guys come up to me and ask me out. Otherwise, I would never go on dates. He and I kept messaging. I started realizing we had a lot in common. A few weeks after that, he told me he was gonna come into town to visit. And he asked me if I wanted to meet up with him for dinner. Obviously said no at first, but then I realized why not? I mean, nothing would happen, right? Wrong. First off, he offered to pick me up from my apartment. He opened the door for me to get in the car and we went to a really fancy restaurant where he paid for everything. He made me laugh the entire night. I'm really attracted to guys that can make me laugh. Suddenly, underneath the table, I feel him grab my thigh. Part 2. Am I the asshole for hooking up with my best friend's ex and falling in love with him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when I felt him put his hand on my thigh underneath the table. I was actually really shocked. And we turned to look at each other and we both burst out laughing. It wasn't awkward or uncomfortable at all. It's like we had already known each other for so long because we actually did. Mind you, we're at a restaurant and he sits closer to me and asked me if he could kiss me. I mean, how romantic. I said yes. And for about 5 minutes, we were full on making out in the middle of the restaurant. It was like fireworks were going off. I had never in my life felt this way about any man. Like I said in part 1, I'm super shy. I'm so shy. No, I really am. But I guess because I knew him from dating my best friend, I felt very comfortable. After that, he took me home and nothing happened. He was only planning to stay in town for a week, but he decided to extend his stay so that he could take me out on a few more dates. We went rock climbing, had a beautiful picnic. He even taught me how to surf. For a full week, we hung out every single day. My best friend started suspecting something. Started asking me who I was hanging out with so much, and I told her I didn't want to tell her yet. She knows that I'm seeing somebody. After our 7th date, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I said no. I told him it was just wrong for us to do this since he was my best friend's ex. And he told me that neither of us owed her any loyalty, and that he found out that she actually cheated on him and left him for another guy. I just couldn't say yes. She's my best friend. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for hooking up with my best friend's ex and falling in love with him? Disclaimers in my story time. I sent me on Instagram. Just couldn't go through with it even though she cheated on him. That's when he told me that he would date me to marry and not just to hook up. And then the words came out of his mouth. He said, I love you. Then I just blurted it out too. I mean, I was in love with him. We'd only been hanging out for 2 weeks, but it was so magical. Then we did it right then and there at the beach. And I had sand everywhere, if you know what I mean. After that, we went back to my apartment and he had another confession. He told me that when he was dating my best friend, he always thought I was very pretty and that he always regretted having met her first instead of me, and how I was the complete opposite to my best friend. Then he told me about all the times that she would flirt with other guys in front of him, and that she would openly DM athletes and celebrities in hopes that they would text her back, and that she would turn around and be super jealous and controlling of him. And I have to admit, I know that my best friend is like this. It's been 6 months now, but we still have a long distance relationship. Actually brought up me moving to LA to be with him. It would mean I would have to leave my dream job. Told me that he would help support me until I got my own job. I'm supposed to go visit him in a week and I'm pretty sure he's gonna propose. I haven't told my best friend that I've been dating her ex now for 6 months. That we're totally in love, that the relationship is amazing, that he wants me to move in with him, and that he really wants to marry me. Knowing her, she'll probably throw hands. And I don't really want to lose her friendship. This whole time I managed to convince her that I was single and that I was just dating guys. She recently broke up with her dude and asked me if she should text her ex, aka my boyfriend. I said no. What should I do? Story time about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My husband actually cheated on his wife with me. I started working at his company when I was 18. We started an affair and I knew it was wrong, but at the time I was very broke. He offered me a wealthy lifestyle and believe it or not, we fell in love. So when he and I got married, I was still 18. He was much older than me. He was 42. Everyone in town, of course, started hating me because I broke up the family. His wife couldn't even see my face. My husband already had 2 kids when we got married. One was 12, one was 15. So they were much closer in age to me than he was. The kids and I got along super well. I was their cool stepmom and we had a lot of fun. When I turned 20, the oldest boy came to live with us. And I think you already know what happens. My husband was always traveling for work. That means my stepson and I would be home alone most of the time. One night we decided to watch a movie, and before I knew it, we were making out on the couch. From then, we basically started an affair behind my husband's back. Part 2 is up. Part 2 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said, my husband was always traveling for work. So my stepson and I would be alone in the house a lot. One night we were watching a movie and it just happened. After that, we couldn't get enough of each other. He even started skipping class so that he could spend more time with me. We basically turned into boyfriend and girlfriend when my husband wasn't there. When my husband would come home from his work trips, we would pretend like everything was normal. One day after my husband got back from one of his work trips, he found one of his son's socks in our bed. He asked me how it got there, but I told him it probably got stuck in there while I was washing the sheets. A few months passed by and my stepson and I are still hooking up. This is when I realized that I hadn't gotten my period in a few months. My period was always irregular, so I didn't think anything of it. My stepson went to the pharmacy to get me a pregnancy test. It came out positive. But the big problem is that my husband can't have children anymore. How was I going to explain this to my husband when he couldn't have kids? Part 3 is up. Part 3 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My stepson and I take the pregnancy test and it turns out it was positive. Well, I told my stepson that his dad wasn't able to have kids anymore. That's when he really flipped out. Then he tells me we should just tell his dad the truth. I told him let's not do anything until we actually confirm that I'm pregnant. We go to the doctor the next day and it turns out I'm not pregnant. But this made me realize that we needed to end the affair. Once we got home, I told him we needed to break things off. He begged me not to and we went to his bedroom. Not even 2 minutes later, his mother walks in. She catches us on his bed. She nearly has a heart attack, calls his dad and tells him everything. She took him out of the house and told me never to see him again. When my husband came back from his trip, he made me promise not to see my stepson again. I told him we should get a divorce, but he said no. Then he confessed to me that he's been having an affair too. Now he doesn't even let me leave the house anymore. I want a divorce. What should I do? Story time about how I set up my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I'm at the airport, so I'm sorry if it's noisy. My boyfriend and I have been together for way too long. When our relationship first started, I was constantly chasing him. He never wanted a relationship and basically didn't want to commit to me. So basically, he was trying to be an F-boy while he was with me. And of course, I let him do whatever he wanted because I was too afraid to lose him. I didn't want to be that annoying, nagging girlfriend, so I just never said anything to him. Fast forward 5 years. I've had a huge glow up since we started dating. I lost weight, I got super fit at the gym, like I have abs now. I opened up my own nail salon, and I even got myself a car and a house. Well, let's just say that he stayed the same. In fact, he has no ambitions to getting a better job or anything, and it really annoys me. He started talking about getting married, and I was like, hell nah. But I don't know how to tell him that I don't want to be with him anymore. I mean, I love him, but I just don't want to be with him anymore. And because I'm too much of a coward to actually break up with him, I set him up to cheat on me. I found this girl on Instagram, and I told her to DM my boyfriend. He DM'd her back. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I got my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. So I got this girl on Instagram to DM him. And this girl was totally his type. Basically, she looked like me, but with blonde hair. So she sent him a little DM. He wasted no time and he got back to her. That same day, they set up a freaking date. So I told this girl that all she had to do was go out with him. Like, meet him at a restaurant, but that was it. Little did I know that she had a crush on him. And it makes sense now thinking about it because my friend recommended her. And my friend afterward told me that she actually had a crush on him. A few days later, she sends me a picture of him sleeping in her bed without a shirt on. And she basically tells me everything that happened. So now I have all this proof. But guess what? I actually got really pissed. It broke my heart because I didn't expect him to do that. And he was totally avoiding all my calls and messages. He finally came over to my house and that's when I showed him all of the receipts. All the pictures and messages between him and the girl. That's when he told me that she drugged him and forced him into doing it. Of course, I knew that wasn't true. Then he pulls out a ring and asked me to marry him. That's when he got on his knees and started begging. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I set up my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. As he's begging on his hands and knees for me to marry him, that's a call from the girl that he cheated on me with. He puts the phone in his pocket and he started acting all nervous, so that's how I knew. That's when I told him to show me his phone. Then he ran to the bathroom and threw it into the toilet. Then he locked himself in my bathroom and basically begged me for 3 hours to stay with him. Told me that he would never be able to find anyone as good as I was, and that he loved me and blah 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 blah. At this point I told him I was going to call the cops to get him out, but I just couldn't bring myself to it. I really felt bad for him. I mean, after all, I did set him up. He eventually left and I didn't speak to him for a few weeks. A few days ago, I actually started talking to this new guy. He's been super flaky and every time we decide to go out, he always bails. So now I'm thinking maybe I should take my ex back. He sent me flowers, but I've been trying to ignore him. But my parents don't want me to get back with him. Part of me thinks that he was probably already cheating on me. I mean, he DM'd that girl really quick. I honestly don't know what to do, and I'm even starting to feel guilty about what I did. At the same time, he totally shouldn't have cheated. What do you guys think I should do?
The most beautiful time. The most beautiful time you've got. The most beautiful diamond you've got.
Story time about how my dad and I caught my boyfriend and his wife cheating on us in a tent. So luckily this is not my real mom. This is my stepmom. Her and my dad married a few years ago. So my family and my boyfriend's family are pretty close. My boyfriend's parents and my parents, aka my stepmom and my dad, get along with his parents. A little backstory on my stepmom. After my dad and my mom got divorced, he met her and they started dating pretty quickly. And they got married after only 5 months of having dated. So she becomes my stepmom, but she never really made any effort to get to know me. And I never really liked her. Like, she gave me a weird feeling. So my boyfriend and his family asked us to go on a camping trip one time, and my dad and I didn't really want to go because we never really go out, but my stepmom was super keen on going and she finally convinced us to go, so we ended up going. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was like, wait, why do you want to go to this camping trip so much? We finally get there and set up our camping tents. That's when my dear stepmom says that she doesn't want me and my boyfriend sleeping in the same tent just in case we try to do something. In other words, she didn't want him and I to do the dirty. Why? Because she was hoping that my boyfriend and her would do the dirty. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my dad and I caught my boyfriend and his wife doing the dirty, literally right next to us. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, my stepmom said that my boyfriend and I couldn't sleep in the same tent because she didn't want us doing anything. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that during this time, my stepmom and my dad were always fighting and they were totally ignoring each other, so they couldn't sleep in the same tent. So basically, my dad and I were sleeping in the same tent. My stepmom was in another tent. We all go to bed and everyone's asleep. That's when I started hearing like the noise of plants ruffling. I ignored it and I went back to sleep. But then I heard some giggling coming from the tent. So I start walking over to my boyfriend's tent because that's where all the giggling is coming from. I was trying not to be heard, and as I started getting closer to the tent, I tripped over and fell into the tent. That's when both my stepmom and my boyfriend start screaming, and I see them sitting naked in the tent. That's when my boyfriend started lying, saying that she forgot something in his tent and that's why she was there. And it gets worse. My dad wakes up and hears all the commotion. He comes over to find his wife and my boyfriend naked. Part 3 of how my dad and I caught his wife and my boyfriend doing the dirty right next to us. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 2, I fall into the tent and catch my boyfriend naked with my stepmom in it. That's when my dad comes over and sees them both naked. And my dad just started going nuts. He started yelling at my stepmom. My dad was so hurt. And I was too, but I was also in shock from seeing my stepmom naked. I couldn't believe that my boyfriend had been hooking up with my stepmom all this time. And like right under my dad's and my nose. That's when my dad and I were just yelling at them. But then my dad called an Uber and we went home. He went straight to his lawyer and filed for divorce. But of course, my stepmom didn't want to sign the divorce papers, so it took really long for my dad to finally get divorced from that witch. Oh yeah, and I haven't spoken to my ex ever since the day I caught him naked with my stepmom. I never even got an apology, not one from him. Time for shoutouts. I will be choosing one person from my live to give a shout out to in my next story time. So today's shout out is for Cindy_the_tree. Another story time is coming the day after tomorrow. Bye. Story time about how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies that I met at the strip club. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sent to me on Instagram. I have been a tripper for 2 years. And yes, I will be referring to myself as a tripper. A few months ago, I started looking for new ways to earn money because I don't want to be a tripper for the rest of my life. Well, around that time, a group of guys came into the club. One of them was super nice and he kept tipping me all night. He literally just talked to me the whole night. He didn't even get dances from other girls and didn't ask me to do anything else other than just talk. I basically made my entire rent just from all the tips he gave me. By the end of the night, he had asked me for my number and I gave it to him, which is super uncommon. I never give out my number, but this guy was really nice. A few days later, we went out to dinner and he asked me if I wanted to be his sugar baby. I said yes immediately. Ever since then, we hang out once a week and he pays me on average $4,000 a month. A few months into our arrangement, he asked me if I wanted to quit the strip club. I said probably not, but he told me that eventually he wanted me to. A few weeks ago, this new guy comes into the club and he also asked me to be his sugar baby, so I said yes. This is where things get scary. Part 2 of how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies I met at the trip club. Now I basically have to choose between one of them. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So this other guy comes into the club and asked me if I want to be his sugar baby. I immediately said yes. This man owned several businesses and everyone knew him around town. A week into our arrangement, he started becoming really jealous. He was constantly asking me if I had a boyfriend or if I had other sugar daddies. Of course I said no. That's when I realized I had to hide everything from both of these guys. Luckily, the second sugar daddy traveled a lot. He would FaceTime me all the time and even asked me to turn on my location. The only reason I put up with it was because he was giving me $7,000 a month. That's when sugar daddy number 1 asked me to quit the club again. And I basically said yes because I was getting enough money. I didn't realize it then, but he basically took that as me saying that I wanted to be in a relationship with him. That's when he started wanting to come over to my place all the time and basically spend every single day with me. So I would tell him I was going to the gym, but really I was going to go see my other sugar daddy. Then sugar daddy number 2 asked me if I wanted to move into a better apartment, and he became my co-signer. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I ended up with 2 sugar daddies and I had to choose between one of them. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So sugar daddy number 2 offers me an apartment and wants to be my co-signer. And the apartment was so beautiful. It was 2 bedrooms, had a washer dryer inside the unit. It even had a doorman and a pool and everything. It was a huge step up from the place I had. This is when sugar daddy number 1 started getting really suspicious. He asked me how I could afford it. Then I broke the news to him that I had a second sugar daddy. He freaked out and told me I needed to choose between him or the other guy. I can't tell sugar daddy number 2 because he's super jealous, but my gut tells me to go with sugar daddy number 2. He pays me more money and gave me the apartment, but number 1 is super nice. But number 2 travels all the time, so I don't have to see him all the time. I don't know. What do you guys think I should do? I love my new apartment though. What do I do?
My 28 female best friend cheated, and I know. My best friend cheated on her spouse with an old fling that has used and abused her from day one. She was never able to fully let him go, despite being in her current relationship for 3 years. A few months ago, she went over to his house, told her husband she was going to a friend's, and they ended up sleeping together. He, of course, ghosted him immediately, as it is his MO. She was deeply hurt, but now is feeling great. She feels she got the closure she needed from this guy and is moving on with her life, planning her wedding. COVID ruined their plans last year, and they had a very small event just to make things legal, in which I am her maid of honor. Here's the thing though, the guilt is eating me alive. My husband and I are very close with her and hers, and every time I see her husband, I feel terrible for knowing something like this and not telling him. My best friend absolutely refuses to tell him, as she knows this is his deal breaker and will leave her. Plus, will expose all the lies she told him about this particular person over the years. I know it's not my place to tell him, and she genuinely seems happier, and the relationship is going better now that she's gotten her closure, but I don't know how to swallow the guilt and stand by her and her husband as a maid of honor, knowing what I know.
To hold on to, give me something. To hold on to. We going up, yeah, we going up, baby. Give me. We going up, yeah, we going up, baby. Give me something to hold on to. Give me something to hold on to.
I own a vape shop. We're a small business with only 12 employees. One of my employees, Peggy, was supposed to open yesterday. I recently promoted Peggy to manager after 2 solid years of good work as cashier. I really thought that she could handle the responsibility. So I wake up 3 hours after the place should have been open, and I have 22 notifications on the store Facebook page. Customers have been trying to come to the shop, but the store is closed. Employees are showing up to work, but they're locked out. I call Peggy and get no response. I text her and same thing. So I go in and open the store. An hour before her shift was supposed to be over, she calls me back. I ask her if she's okay, and she says she needed to take a mental health day and do some self-care. I'm still pretty pissed at this point, but I'm trying to be understanding, as I know how important mental health can be. So I ask her why she didn't call me as soon as she knew that she needed the day off. Her response, I didn't have enough spoons in my drawer for that. Frankly, I don't know what that means, but it seems to me like she's saying that she cannot be trusted to handle the responsibility of opening the store in the morning. So I told her that she has 2 choices. Either go back to her old position with her old pay, or I fire her completely. She's calling me all sorts of ists now and says that I'm discriminating against her due to her poor mental health and her gender. None of this would have been a problem if she simply took 2 minutes to call out. I would have gotten up and opened the store on time. But this no-call, no-show shit is not the way to run a successful business. I think I might be the asshole here because I am taking away her promotion over something she really had no control over. But at the same time, she really could have called me. Am I the asshole for telling an employee that she can choose between demotion or termination? Part 2. Am I the asshole for telling an employee that she can choose between demotion or termination? Peggy reached out to me yesterday and apologized and asked if we could meet for lunch. We met up, and the first thing she did was apologize again for the no-call, no-show, and also for her reaction to my response. She admitted that she knows I'm not sexist or ableist, and explained that she was lashing out due to her mental state. I accepted her apology and offered her one of my own, both for giving too much responsibility too quickly and also for reacting out of emotion. She explained to me that she had a major issue on Monday, and without getting into too much detail, I'll just say that it was an anniversary of a bad thing. She's taking all of her accumulated PTO, 9 weeks, and we've agreed that going forward, I'm not going to put her on the schedule on that day ever again. She's admitted that she's not up to the role of manager. When she returns, she'll be in the role of lead cashier, a role I created specifically for her. This way, she can keep her raise and not feel like she got a demotion, but rather a lateral transfer. I've also let her know that if she ever feels like she's up to more responsibility, she can let me know and I'll put her right back on track for the manager spot. Also, I let her know that if she's ever in the position where she's not able to call out, she can simply text me a thumbs down emoji and I will accept that as a notice that she'll be missing her next shift. She agreed that will be okay even when she's out of spoons. Hopefully we can both move forward from this unfortunate incident and end up better for it.
Am I wrong for telling my boyfriend that he should have covered up his tattoos if he wanted any respect from my family? Oh, I'm already calling you the asshole here because that already just sounds really degrading and mean, so I don't like that. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 2 years. We're polar opposites but managed to work through our differences in the past. Okay, for some context, he's almost 90% tattooed up to his neck, and comes from a difficult background to put it mildly. Today, he's employed and doing well for himself, but his upbringing was quite rough. I wouldn't describe myself as posh at all, but I come from a family where image, looks, and your accomplishments matter. However, I'd say I'm a little more casual than them. A few months ago, I finally got the courage to introduce him to my family. This was a huge deal to me, and I told him that first impressions would make or break everything. I told him that he will cover his tattoos, no ifs, ands, or buts, because my parents are super old-fashioned. I bought him an outfit for the night to ensure he looked presentable and classy. We had a practice run and I told him what he should do and shouldn't say, how to talk, how to address any of my dad's concerns, etc. Oh my god, what is this? At no point did he ever show any enthusiasm, so that was a bad sign. You're basically saying, hey, You're not good enough for my parents, and so therefore they're gonna say you're not good enough for my daughter. Fast forward to dinner. It was an absolute disaster. Yes, my parents and sister were a little critical, but they're like that with any guy I date. My boyfriend was so pissed that he purposely unbuttoned the top of his shirt so you could see his tatted neck. Of course, that offended my parents, and a huge argument ensued. Not only were they telling him that he's not good enough for me, what did I say? They were telling me how disappointed they are. It was a nightmare. To make it worse, my boyfriend told them that I like his tattoos, which I do, but he was just adding fuel to the fire, and it didn't matter what they think. They told him to leave. See, this is where you fucked up. You should have had this conversation with your family before you brought your husband, your boyfriend into this and make him feel like shit. You should have told him this is how he is. He has tattoos. If you want to meet him, great. If you don't, I'm not coming. Like, take it as that. Why would you? It goes without saying that my parents have zero respect for him now. It was already difficult to convince them that he's much sweeter than he may appear. My mom has been hysterical and asking why I'm having intimate relations with someone who looks like they belong in prison. He's not a criminal. Well, you made him sound like one. I have been guilt-tripped and made to feel like complete shit, all because he chose to wreak havoc. He didn't choose to wreak havoc. Why are you saying that? Like, you fucked up. Oh my god, I feel so bad for him. A couple of days ago, we were arguing, and I told him that he should have hid his tattoos if he wanted any respect from people like my family. He was hurt and said that it's fucked up that I want him to change to gain respect from them. He even claimed that I'm obviously embarrassed to be associated with him and not even worthy of respect in his eyes. None of that is true, just saying. After the argument, we haven't talked much. So, am I the asshole for telling my boyfriend that he should have covered his tattoos if he wanted to establish a level of respect my parents could work from? It's not that they bother me. I think he's crazy attractive, tattoos or not, but he knew that my parents would freak out.
Am I the asshole for walking around my house in lingerie? My husband and I got married recently and moved into our new home. The neighborhood is nice and quiet, and the neighbors are really nice except for this family that lives next to us. Although we just got back from our honeymoon, I still wear lingerie sometimes and walk around in them when I wake up in the morning and make breakfast. The other day I was in the kitchen preparing coffee while my husband was out and heard a knock on the door. I grabbed my robe and opened the door and found the next door neighbor. He said his 7-year-old kid's window is facing our living room and his daughter uses binoculars and saw me wearing inappropriate clothes while walking in the living room. I was taken aback, and it turns out the daughter uses her binoculars to watch the yard, but she peeped through our large windows. Am I the asshole for walking around my house in lingerie? I also want to say we do have curtains. He said it wasn't cool and his daughter just saw something she can't unsee and that is not appropriate. He requested that I be considerate when it comes to clothing or lack thereof, but I thought that was just ridiculous since this is my house. I argue that this is my home and I get to wear whatever I want, and also his daughter has no business peeping. He said she's a kid and meant no harm and was just curious. I said he was gonna have to leave, and he said he would ensure that I don't expose his daughter to stuff like that in the future. I told my husband and he agreed with our neighbors, saying I should just leave the laundry in the room where it belongs and learn to put decent clothes on. Also that I shouldn't have spoke to the neighbor like that.
I'm 15 years old. I have a stepsister who is a couple years older than me, and she's really seriously disabled. I'm not sure what's wrong with her because no one ever wants to discuss it with me, but she's nonverbal, breaks her bones a lot, and has severe epilepsy and will have many fitting episodes. She also doesn't understand stuff. That's probably the easiest way to put it. She's just a human body with nothing inside. She's my stepmom's daughter. My stepmom married my dad 3 years ago, and they dated only for a year before that. I don't know my stepmom very well, and I don't get along with her. We're respectful to each other, but I'm basically living with strangers because she's so busy with her daughter and my dad. I'm always on my own, and I used to hate it, but now I'm used to it. Ever since they moved in to live with us, life changed drastically for me because all the care now revolves around my stepsister. That's fine. I get it. Both my stepmom and dad asked me to do things for my stepsister that I don't want to do and I resent doing. Stuff like staying home when I want to go to the mall with my friends. They're disappointed that I don't get her anything for her birthday with my very limited funds, etc. My birth mom passed away when I was small, so I can't go stay anywhere else, and all in all, I'm just a lot more angry than I used to be because they seem really disappointed whenever I don't want to do anything for her. Even stuff like feeding her, like, I don't want to sit there feeding her banana pudding and wiping her drool. I didn't ask for this. Anyway, she recently fell a few days ago and had a seizure for 8 minutes. She was taken to the hospital and the doctors want to keep her there and look after her. I don't want to go and visit her. I remember seeing my mom in the hospital before she died, and I just hate hospitals and I sort of hate my stepsister, and I don't want to go visit someone who doesn't even know that I'm there. My stepmom is really upset with me, and so is my dad. They haven't yelled at me or anything, but they are both being super cold towards me because I don't want to visit. My grandma, who lives in Canada, called me up out of the blue and told me that it was okay and I don't need to force myself to go to the hospital, so I'm assuming that my dad told her that I'm refusing to go. He keeps pleading with me, but I keep telling him that I'm not doing it. I told him that hospitals remind me of mom, and he got even more upset and said that my stepsister might die and I need to stop being so selfish towards my stepmom. Half of my friends think that I should go, and the other half think that I'm justified in saying no. Am I the asshole because I refuse to go to visit my special needs sister in the hospital even though she's very sick?
Am I the asshole for judging my girlfriend for getting her nails done? Me, 21 male, and my girlfriend, 23 female, live together and split rent. It's our 4th month living together, and in December, my girlfriend told me she couldn't afford to spend half her rent because she works under the table and took time off to be with me on a family trip. I paid for all of the rent for 1 month, then I noticed my girlfriend going on spending sprees and paying for $500 lip injections. Also, multiple trips to the spa and nail salon. 2 days ago, my girlfriend came home from the nail salon and I ignored her and didn't ask to see her nails or toes like normal. The next day, she texted me and told me that she felt like I was judging her for getting her nails done, and I told her I wasn't gonna lie and that I was judging her. All that money could have went towards the rent. Am I the asshole for judging my girlfriend for getting her nails done? I said I was judging her for getting her nails done and trips to the spa, and all the money she has been spending could have easily gone towards the rent. I'm 1 year away from my bachelor's and I've managed to pay for the degree all myself using my own money. Last month was the first month I've ever had to put school money on a credit card because I needed the money for the rent. Now that I spent that money on rent, I have to put grocery bills and power bills and other bills on my credit card for the first time. I told this to my girlfriend and she told me that I'm an asshole for judging her for doing something that makes her feel happy. And that I should feel good knowing that I'm with a woman who wants to look good for me. She also said that we've split our finances and that I have no right to judge her for what she wants to spend money on. Am I the asshole for laughing at a child-free woman wanting to be a housewife? I've been online dating for quite a while and my profile very clearly states I'm dating with marriage as the end goal. I matched a few weeks ago with a charming woman who said she was also dating with the intent to get married. She wanted a traditional relationship where she would be a housewife. I agree I'd be happy with that arrangement in the future. We chat about a variety of subjects and set up a date. During the date, she casually mentioned she doesn't want children. I said, but you said you were looking to become a housewife. She responds, you can be a housewife and still not want children? I chuckled and she took great offense. She said, why can't I be? I asked what she'd be doing all day. She said what housewives do after their children go off on their own. I said they usually go back to work. I told her no man is gonna take that deal.
Am I wrong for rescheduling my friend's bachelorette party? My female 24, friend female 24, I've known about for 10 years is getting married in August. I am the maid of honor. We booked our hotel room in January. Party was planned for the end of May. I don't live in the same city as the bride, so her and the other girls in the bridal party are planning on driving to me, which is a 3-hour drive. I just found out that a trip me and my mom have been planning to Europe this spring for the last 3 years was already canceled once in 2020, has been canceled again due to low numbers in tour. Our travel agent had another tour we could choose that is for sure a go, but it would be interfering with the bachelorette. Travel agent said other tours later in the year are also not a guarantee and prices could change. I messaged the bridal party and apologized for needing to change the date, and I explained that this is a trip that is important for me and my mom, and we have limited options. The girls agreed to change the date to the end of April, and I spoke with the bride on the phone and all seemed well, and she said she understood and was optimistic everything would work out. The next day she messages me saying it's not going to work. We talk on the phone and she says the rest of the girls don't want to change the date as it is inconvenient for them and their schedules. As well, another friend was planning to fly in from another city. I had messaged her already to apologize. She had previously told me that flights were cheap and she also has family here or could visit the bride at the end of May if she couldn't change the flights. I told the bride that my mom told the travel agent to book this new tour and my mom is not changing it again. I asked why we couldn't pick another weekend when almost all of the girls have weekends off. I told her that if we don't change the date, then I will not be at the bachelorette. She said, I guess you won't be then. After, I messaged the bridal party group chat to explain to the girls I can't change this trip now and that there is a lot of money wrapped up in it. I said sorry again and just asking why they can't make another date work. I also gave the option that some could drive in on Saturday if not able to on Friday due to work. Another bridesmaid sent a huge message saying it was disrespectful that I expect 5 people to change their schedule for just me and that she knows I can easily change my trip to another date and that I don't get to make calls on the driving schedule. I stated I was not trying to disrespect anyone and was just giving options so that things could work out. I told her she was out of line for calling me disrespectful. I also was speaking to the bride on her own chat and I said I feel like she isn't backing me up on this and I feel hurt she is willing to exclude me. She said she doesn't have the confidence that I'll be there for her on her wedding day and that this isn't all about me. It's supposed to be about her. So am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for turning away a woman knocking on my door in the middle of the night looking for help? I fully admit that I don't really think I did anything wrong, and this is ridiculous to me, but my partner is angry and thinks that I'm an asshole. Maybe I am. Around 1:30 a.m. today, a woman who neither me or my partner has ever seen before came knocking at our door. I admit, she was acting upset. She said that she was looking for her boyfriend. It was snowing and cold outside in the middle of the night. My antennas pretty much instantly rolled. I've heard stories of people knocking on doors and faking distress looking for houses to rob. My partner, on the other hand, is ready and willing to let her in and try to help. Help with what? Her boyfriend is not here, and he has never been here. I tell her not so nicely that he's not here, and that I know what she's doing, and that she needs to get the F off my property now. Now we're up. It's almost 3 a.m. and still arguing on and off about me being an a-hole to some poor innocent woman who's just worried about her boyfriend. I don't understand what we could have done. Whoever this dude is, he certainly hasn't been at our place. If she's cold and upset, maybe she should go home and file a missing persons report on her own phone at her own house. My partner argues that they may have been homeless. Her boyfriend may have had a mental issue or some substance abuse problems that are weighing on her, so she can't do that. And all of that is a true possibility. I spoke harshly because I don't believe her at all, and that if anything else even mildly suspicious happened after that door closed, I will be calling the cops. I did not verbally threaten to call the cops, nor did I actually do it. My partner thinks I'm heartless. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Am I the a-hole? Sir, you are not the a-hole in this situation. Your silly girlfriend is. I'm sorry, but you were absolutely right. There are many instances where people will fake needing help or fake their car breaking down, fake needing to use a phone in order to just gain access into your home. Maybe the boyfriend doesn't exist and the crazy person or the person with mental issues is the one behind the door or on the other side of it. And by opening it, you let that crazy into your home that you now have to deal with. Your girlfriend is completely in the wrong. You do not, and let me say this to everybody watching, you do not let strangers into your home at 1:30 in the morning, ever. You call the police if they need help. Make them stay outside. Why? Because it is too easy once they are inside your house to do harm to you and your family. There's too many ways where that can go wrong, and the odds of it truly being someone that needs help outweighs your at 1:30 in the morning. Does not outweigh the possibility of you losing your life to someone knocking on your door at 1:30 in the morning. I'm sorry, you did the right thing. None of her story made sense, and there's too much that could have went wrong too fast. And if those things did go wrong, it would be the responsibility of the man to handle it. So while she gets to sit in la-la land and not have to worry about these things, you as the man of the house have to think about what you have to be prepared to do if things go south. So no, you are correct, and hopefully one day when she's a little bit more mature, after maybe she's experienced some more life, she will understand exactly how right you were that night. So no, you're not the a-hole. Am I the asshole for making my stepson walk home on his engagement night after his disgusting behavior? My stepson, Rowan, a 23-year-old male, just got engaged to his fiancée. She comes from a highly conservative family, and they both won't live together till marriage. They're both on great terms, and I have to say her parents are a bit much. So the engagement party was held at a restaurant. I drove my wife, Rowan, and his best friend, Jack, there because Rowan's car needed some work. Things went quite well, and the party ended, and everyone went home. On the way back, I had to stop by the store so I could grab something for our 16-year-old son. Rowan and Jack kept laughing when this young lady walked towards us because her car was parked next to mine in the parking lot. Rowan kept trying to speak to her while she was trying to load her stuff in the car. He and Jack kept throwing words at her, and she seemed annoyed. Jack then said, "Hey, he just wants to look at that ass." Then Rowan said, "Let me see it jiggle, baby." I was appalled. I told them to both knock it off, but then Rowan sarcastically replied, "Relax, I was just giving her a compliment. I bet she won't get many of those too often." The lady got in her car, and I started arguing with him about his behavior and shamed him for acting like this on his own engagement night. He argued back, saying something about my car, and I lost it. I told him to get out immediately. Jack got involved, so I kicked him out too. My wife got back and started engaging in the argument, saying I can't let her son walk home from his engagement party. I replied that her son can't be harassing other women on the way back from his engagement party, but she kept defending him. I told her to either stay or get in the car. She did, and I drove off. Rowan didn't come home, and my wife gave me hell for it. We later found out that he was staying at one of his guy's friend's place. From what I understand, he's pissed at me and refusing to see me. My wife said it was my fault. She said that I escalated the situation over something stupid that boys do all the time. I told her that he can't do this while in my car, but she took it as in I was holding it over his head. She said I should have never made him walk the night of his engagement and demanded that I apologize to him. Am I the a-hole? Sir, see, this is the thing. I don't even know what a woman wants, and this is the perfect example. You try to be an ally, right? You fight against the patriarchy. You shame your stepson for all the negative he's done for harassing this young woman while she's just trying to get in her car. And your wife comes out and takes his side completely. Now, I get it, she wasn't there, but goddamn. You can't win for losing. But no, you were not the a-hole in this situation, and I completely applaud you for standing by your character and your principles and not allowing this young man to just harass this woman and think that it's okay. They were completely in the wrong, and while it may have been funny to and his friend Jack, they don't know how they made this woman feel. She could have been afraid. She could have been annoyed. That could have been the worst part of her day. It could have depressed her. You don't know what she's going through, and what she didn't deserve and what she didn't need is two men harassing her for nothing. She deserved better as a human being, and it takes good men standing up and checking other other men when they do these kinds of things to make it uncool, unpopular, and for them to understand it is not the behavior that a man should exhibit, especially not one that's getting ready to get married. So no, you did the right thing. If Rowan didn't want to walk home, he shouldn't have been talking shit. Am I the asshole for refusing to give in to my Disney-obsessed adult sister? My niece just turned 5 and we got her a magic mixie. My sister Elsa has a strict Disney toy-only policy and literally gives us lists of acceptable Disney-only toys, but that's not what my niece wanted. She's been obsessed with getting a magic mixie since her friend got one. My brother-in-law doesn't care and gets her other stuff all the time. So I text him and he said that it was okay to not stick to the list since the grandparents got her stuff that wasn't Disney related. He said that he wants his daughter to branch out more and to ignore the list. But Elsa, his wife, is a Disney adult. Everything has to be Disney related. Before my niece was born, Elsa sent out a Facebook post and a family-wide email saying that anything without a Disney character on it, toys, clothes, bedding, furniture, these things would not be donated. They would only be thrown out. We've never actually sent my niece a gift at all because we knew Elsa would throw it away. Disney is her aesthetic and she'll throw things away in front of people who gift them to her if they're not plastered with the cartoon characters. Back to the story. At her birthday party, my niece opened the magic mixie and went bananas. Elsa didn't say anything other than a neutral, how cute, and then moved on to something else. After the party was over, Elsa went apeshit and said it's my fault she has to throw her kid's toy away. Apparently, she and my brother-in-law got into a big fight when she tried to throw it out during the birthday party. She also tried to give it to several other parents at the party. Jesus. The moms from our mom group called her insensitive that she tried to get rid of a toy her kid was so excited about and asked if she was going to do that with their gifts. My mom called me later and said that I was a huge for not sticking to what Elsa wanted and making her anxious about the presents. Because I guess after the party, her mom group of friends got pissed at her when they found out she throws gifts away. So she and the niece are uninvited from a lot of spring activities. Am I the a-hole here? No, you are not the a-hole. What we are watching is when someone who is doing something that is terrible has to suffer the consequences. See, it's cute and okay at first when a kid is 1, 2, and 3. She's gotten away with it for a long time, even though she was rude, disrespectful, inconsiderate, and a little crazy. People let her get away with that because either they didn't know or because husband was putting up with it. Looks like her husband is tired of this and now the child is old enough to speak for itself and nobody is going with this BS. It's not an aesthetic, it's an obsession. It has nothing to do with her daughter, it has everything to do with her. And to be honest, she needs some psychological help. And so yes, she is the a-hole, not you. And I would not apologize because that is reinforcing bad behavior. And eventually your niece is going to get sick of this and she needs to face all of these people who she's offended head on and realize that she is the one in the wrong. You backing up her insanity by apologizing is not going to help anyone. So no, you are not the a-hole, she is. Am I the asshole for not putting my husband's children in my will? My husband Jack and I married later in life. We were both in our 50s. It was a second marriage for both of us. He has 3 children. I don't have any biological children, but I'm still very close to my former stepson, Thomas, that I helped raise. We were both very well off financially. Jack more than me. Jack owned his own business and was upfront that he intended that business to be left to his children. We signed a prenup before our wedding that basically said we each get to keep what we brought into the marriage. We kept our finances separate, though we both contributed to a joint account for household expenses, which we split 50-50. When we did our wills at this time, Jack left everything to his children and I left mine to Thomas. We were both aware of what the other had done and we were fine with it. Jack's business went under about 4 years ago. He was desperate to keep the business going and poured all his savings into it. The business had been his grandfather's and then his father's and he was determined to be able to hand it down to his children. He ended up losing almost everything. He was completely devastated. Standard of living wise, not much change except that I am paying 100% of household expenses. I love him and I'm fine with this. I had a health scare about a month ago when I realized that if I died, Jack would be left with nothing as my will gives everything I own to Thomas. I told Jack that I was planning to change my will. My plan was to put a third of my assets into a trust for Thomas's children. He has 2 currently that both call me Nana, and a third in a trust for Jack. I would set it up so that Jack would receive a generous monthly check, but after he died, the assets in the trust would go to Thomas. I did it that way because I wanted Jack taken care of while he was alive, but after that I wanted to go to Thomas, not Jack's kids. Jack is furious that his children aren't going to receive anything. He kept pointing out that I have 3 stepchildren, not just one former one. Why are his kids getting nothing and Thomas everything? I should say that by the time we got together, Jack's children were all grown. One already had a child of their own and one was married. Other than the occasional holiday, I've never lived with Jack's kids, and while he is not mine biologically, Thomas is my son in every way that counts. While I get along with Jack's kids, we're not close at all. Jack is threatening to leave me over this. He keeps saying that if I don't care about his kids, that means I don't care about him. I've told him that is nonsense and that I don't respond well to ultimatums. We had planned to leave our assets separately before we were ever married, but now that he doesn't have money, suddenly he wants to leave my money to his kids? Am I the a-hole for not wanting this? You are not the a-hole, and you already said everything that I could say. When he was up and had more money than you, he was determined that the legacy he built be left to his children. You are entitled to make the exact same decisions if you choose to. You're right. He's only doing this because he can't leave anything to his kid. And I get it. Why not fight for them to get something if you can? But after you draw your line and you say no, that should be the end of it. You're going to make sure that you keep paying for him to be fine until the day that he died. That's more than what anybody can ask for. It's beautiful. It's lovely. It's so caring and unselfish. That is something that we should all aspire to do for ourselves and someone else. It's a beautiful gift to give someone. He is in the wrong. You are not the a-hole, and you should be allowed to make whatever financial decisions you choose to make. Am I the asshole for refusing to apologize to my mother-in-law after she walked into my house and saw me in my underwear? This sounds like the beginning of a certain type of movie to me. This happened yesterday at 9 in the morning. Our 33-year-old female was in the kitchen eating breakfast wearing my regular underwear. Suddenly, I heard gasping sounds coming towards me. I turned and saw my mother and sister-in-law yelling about what I was wearing. I was in utter shock and froze in my seat. My husband was asleep at the time and he must have heard his mother and sister scream because he ran downstairs asking what was going on. His mom started ranting loudly about what an inappropriate scene she and her daughter saw. I'm still sitting in shock when my husband started yelling at me to go put something on quickly. I went upstairs while his mom kept yelling after me, calling me shameless and inappropriate, and I then heard my husband say it won't happen again. I was so mad. I put a coat on and went downstairs and started arguing with my mother-in-law again. I told her that she shouldn't have come over without notice, but turns out my husband told her to come over at 9 to discuss a family crisis. My mother-in-law said I was in the wrong for walking around half naked knowing she has a key and might show up at any minute. I told her it's my home and she said it's her son's home too. We argued and my husband told me to knock it off and apologize. But I refused and went back upstairs. Then after his mom and sister left, he called me childish and inappropriate. I tried to explain my side, but he said what's done is done and he promised his mom that I will apologize. But I told him I will never apologize and she's gonna have to wait decades for that one. He got upset and called me disrespectful towards my guests, and my mother-in-law was technically a guest. Am I the a-hole here? Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. You are not the a-hole in this situation. First of all, the only person that's really in the wrong in this situation is your husband. He made plans without telling you, and while it was an emergency and called everybody at the last minute, there was no way for you to know that you had company on the way. And even if company has a key, company shouldn't be using that key unless it's actually an emergency that they're responding to. You don't just walk into my house without knocking first. I don't give a damn if I gave you a key or not, because the key is not for you to come and go as you please, because you don't live here. You are not wrong. You had every right to be walking around in your underwear in your own home. What are they expecting you to do? Stay fully clothed unless you're in your bathroom or in your bedroom, and even though 99% of the time you and your husband are the only people there? Or are you supposed to go walk around the house knocking on doors or peeking around corners, even though, again, 99% of the time it was only you and your husband there? Now, your mother-in-law is delusional. She makes no sense, and I also don't understand why she's so angry about you being in your underwear in your home. Like, I get it. It's an embarrassing situation for everybody, but that's all it is. It's not disrespectful. It didn't have to escalate to this place. And if your husband can't see why all of this is an issue and can't check his own mother, then you have a bigger problem than are you the a-hole in this situation. You are in the right 100%. And you need to think about if these are the kind of people that you want to be family with.